Welcome to Hanging on the Moon. Welcome to Hanging on the Moon. See, it happens every week. Google, they give me that little, you're live on the air, and then you actually see live. And they trick me every single week. And I am not tricked by the fact this is not Chris Walder who is with me this week. It is our new co-host, Josh Lopez, who is my colleague over at Between the Ropes. Welcome, Josh, and say hello to all the fine folks out there in Google Hangout land.
I'm glad to be back here on Google Hangouts. For those who don't know, I first started doing my own broadcast here on Google Hangouts before I moved on to radio. But glad to be here on Hangin On The Moon, James. And how are you doing today?
I am doing better than Alberto Del Rio, who apparently, breaking news, within the last hour, Alberto Del Rio is no longer employed by the WWE. Now, this is not one of those cost-cutting things like JTG and he picked up his phone by accident. Apparently, and this comes straight from WWE.com, so this is not rumors or dirt sheets. This is straight from WWE.com. I will read it, in fact, verbatim from WWE.com so we don't get anything messed up. Okay, maybe I won't because I actually closed that on my browser. But basically, what they had on WWE.com was Alberto Del Rio has been released due to an altercation he had with a WWE employee, which leaves a lot of speculation as to what exactly happened. But apparently, Alberto Del Rio is no more, and this is very interesting. They didn't go into any details. Right now, the WWE, I know they're on tour in Australia. It's not clear when this happened, if it happened at a television taping or if it actually happened as part of this tour. I don't know if Del Rio was on the Australian tour. I'm not that up to date on who actually was on this tour. I know it was a big deal that Dean Ambrose was on the tour because apparently he wasn't supposed to be, and now he was. But Alberto Del Rio, no longer in the WWE. Not a surprise that he's gone because a lot of people were speculating that his time with the WWE was coming to an end. But the way he goes out in this blaze of, well, glory would be the wrong term for it given what the WWE has said, but just, goes out like that. And, there's been all kinds of stories lately. Of course, we had the famous story with Emma where she was fired and then she was back. But this seems a much different case and kind of shocking, Josh. What was your first impressions when you heard the news Alberto Del Rio was no more?
At first, I wasn't really surprised because there's been numerous reports that came out about him being a hard guy
We're
to
having
deal
trouble
with.
with Josh's audio. I can't hear him, so I don't know what's going on there.
You hear
So
me now?
Josh, testing 1 2 3 on your end.
You hear me? You hear
Well, it
me?
might have been me. It might have been me, not you. Never mind.
All right. Well, I was just saying I wasn't really shocked because there's been reports that went out about him being a hard guy to deal with backstage, and I was just thinking, especially for the year he's been having, it's been him being a placeholder for guys that are in title contention tournaments or this or beat the clock challenges, and I thought it was just a matter of when he would be gone, but not how would he be let go by the company.
Yeah, and it's just the kind of thing that Del Rio really, he's a talented wrestler and he's a talented guy, but at the end of the day, I don't think Alberto Del Rio has ever been the same since they took away Ricardo Rodriguez from him.
Yeah.
And Ricardo obviously just left the company under much different circumstances about a week ago, and now Del Rio quickly out the door behind him. And I think his best work clearly was when he was paired with Ricardo, and I think Ricardo was a big reason for Del Rio getting over. And when he didn't have Ricardo, it was a much different Alberto Del Rio.
Yeah, I mean, nobody, like I said earlier, nobody really cared about him anymore. It's like, okay, you're there. So, I mean, that, unfortunate for him. I know he has other things outside the WWE he could do, especially with his family lineage. But what a surprise to a quick but I don't know, maybe 50-50 stellar career if you call it for the last 4 years for good old Del Rio.
Well, I mean, he definitely was given opportunities to hold the title and make himself as a star, and I don't think he ever really uh, capped in on it. I mean, I think at the end of the day, he becomes the answer to a trivia question that the WWE will never ask you,
Hmm.
as he was the guy that CM Punk beat to start his 434-day streak. And, you know, do we even go in? Yeah, we're going to go into it. Paul Heyman conducted an interview on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani.
Yeah.
In all honesty, just based on the fact it's a fascinating interview, I recommend everyone within the sound of my voice, if you haven't seen that interview, go check it out. But one of the things within that interview, Paul Heyman shed some light on the situation between CM Punk and the WWE. And if there's anyone else out there that was holding out hope, Paul Heyman pretty much said CM Punk has no intention of ever coming back to the WWE, and the feeling is quite mutual on the WWE side. Heyman went on to say never, because obviously Heyman himself never envisioned himself coming back to the company. But in terms of CM Punk showing up within the next year or even within 2015, he said that was highly doubtful. And I mean, from all the stuff we've seen with Punk, it seems he's very happy outside of the WWE. He seems like he's content with life right now. And Heyman didn't just say about not coming back to WWE. He said CM Punk is determined never to put his wrestling boots on again, because there've been speculation. Well, CM Punk kind of a strange guy in the sense of maybe he'd show up at an ROH show, and we'll have news on ROH coming up later in the program. But maybe CM Punk would just show up at ROH out of the blue. But it appears he has no interest in wrestling in the WWE and ROH and New Japan, anywhere. That he just wants to move on with his life, and if that's what he wants to do, I'm not opposed to that. I mean, he's had a long run in wrestling long before he got to the WWE. I don't begrudge the guy anything, but it is just kind of a sad way for a great career to end if that's how the ending will be.
I heard a infamous line from an interview Punk did before WrestleMania 29 with Sam Rothfuss, where he said he had a discussion with McMahon saying that um, he was harder to work with as opposed to Shawn Michaels when he was on drugs during the late 90s. And that's saying something. And I know there's a tumultuous relationship. It goes to different terms, whether it's him having issues with Vince or it's the issue with him and Hunter that's keeping him not coming back to the company. So many guys, James, that say they're never, ever, ever coming back to the company. But I think if anybody in the history of wrestling that's going to keep all options out the window so the fans don't get a loop, oh, maybe Punk might be coming back, it would be CM Punk. Because he tried to do everything he can to do it the old school way. You're going to be surprised whether he could say on an interview with Chris Van Vliet saying, "Oh, I'm never, ever, ever, ever coming back," and then before you know it, he's back before WrestleMania next year. So it's an interesting situation. Would I like to see Punk back? Of course, but I'm happy that he's moved on with his life right now, and whatever's best for him coming out in his future. I mean, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, and they had that viral video of what was it, a Taylor Swift song
Yeah.
with CM Punk. Just great. Go look that up. I mean, I don't even. Well, I know I've heard the name Taylor Swift, but to say that I know who she is would be a massive lie on my part, because I'm old, Josh. You're younger. I'm old. This is the way it is, and
Who are
we
you
don't
listening to?
I listen to hardly any music, but if I do, it's like old school hip hop,
All right.
like Public Enemy, Ice T, these sort of things. That you know, all the guys that, let's put it this way, all the guys that I know from music have now moved on to careers in movies and television, because that's where the real money is. But we'll go from talking about CM Punk to CM Punk chants, which were part of the final segment of Raw with Brie and Stephanie. Brie Bella is in way over her head. I just thought it was amazing how much that was evident in that final segment, where Stephanie is just, she's on a different level right now. I mean,
Yeah.
she is an incredible talker, and I know people expect very little out of this match. I might be one of the crazy few that actually thinks the match might actually not be as bad as you think. Because Stephanie, for people that don't know, Stephanie's been training in jiu-jitsu, and I think actually might have a little bit of a wrestling game. She certainly looks in shape.
Yeah.
I mean that was clear on Monday's show, and obviously she knows how to deliver pedigree. I wonder where she learned that from. But all in all, 2 weeks in a row, the ladies closing out the show. I thought the first week, I was okay with it. The second week didn't play out as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. You think about it on paper, Brie Bella and Stephanie McMahon at SummerSlam. Be- While we're at WrestleMania, that would be the last thing that would be on your mind as a main story for SummerSlam. But these two ladies, you know, I'm not. I never was always sold on Brie Bella. Stephanie made a lot of good points during their contract signing. She leached onto the studded fame of her husband Daniel Bryan. She gained the other fame from Total Diva. She stole the spotlight from her sister, and um, Bree's got better in the ring. I'll give her credit where credit's due over the last year. And Stephanie, she's like her father. If it's best for business, you put on performances when you least expect it when it comes to in-ring performance.
And there's been a lot of talk that they've kind of done a 180 with how they want this feud to come out, and that we might end up at the end of the day with a Stephanie versus, or sorry, with a Nikki versus Brie feud, which I don't know about that. I'm a little worried. As far as Stephanie goes, I'm almost wondering if this is kind of a test run to do Stephanie AJ at WrestleMania. I think that might be really interesting given all the factors involved, and of course, the fact that fans, as much as people are getting sick of it, I got news for you. As long as AJ Lee is in this company, CM Punk chants will follow her, and this is a way to just embrace that. If you had a feud between Stephanie and AJ, and I think this is almost a test run to see if that's a possibility.
I feel bad on the one point for AJ because I like to see her branch out as her own character instead of kind of being like a carbon ripoff of her husband. I'm not trying to say she is a ripoff, but it comes off as TV as the way she carries herself, or the pipe bombshell last year, and the way she dressed, and the way she handles herself on TV. And then, of course, you got the chance coming in like a bunch of flies coming at you. And I mean, it's kind of funny because AJ said, besides Lita, Stephanie McMahon was her real dream opponent at WrestleMania.
Yeah, it is. Like she's been in interviews where she said just being around Stephanie used to make her nervous, and it's interesting because when you get into all that Punk stuff, one of the people that apparently the worst relationship Punk has with is Stephanie McMahon.
Yeah.
Yet AJ has this love for Stephanie, and I don't know where all of this falls with all what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know if that's changed, obviously, with how her husband's been treated and whatnot. But I always feel that wrestling is the best when you can have those moments of doubt where reality and the script come together. And the classic example of that for me was the feud between Edge and Matt Hardy, where you had Lita involved. That was great television. I think
Mhm.
you put AJ and you put Stephanie in a ring, I think that's equally great television.
Yeah, I think that's what made the attraction of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels so special. I don't know if be as big of an extent as Matt Hardy and Edge were in '05, but yeah, like I agree with you. The personal stuff is what lures people into the television show because you can relate to those situations. And it'll be really interesting if Stephanie brings up the fact that Punk quit if she ever were to do with AJ.
Yeah, if almost the storyline could be Stephanie wants to drive AJ out of the company too,
Mm-hmm.
because Punk, she just doesn't want to hear his name anymore, and it almost writes itself. But we'll see how that goes. Another feud that almost writes itself is this feud with our real main event. Although people are teasing Stephanie and Brie is the main event of SummerSlam, it is actually Brock Lesnar versus John Cena, and I think this is a feud too where if people really think about it, that line gets blurred a little bit. And Brock brought this up in his promo, which was definitely not PG
Nope.
and taped this week on Raw. He brought up the idea of John Cena would be nothing if Brock Lesnar didn't leave. And you can certainly make a case for that because if Brock had stayed, there's no question he would have been the guy. And I don't know what that would have meant for John Cena and his hustle, loyalty, and respect that hadn't even been born yet. But Brock makes a solid case, and John Cena is, of course, the 15-time champion who is, without a doubt, one of the most divisive characters in the history of the WWE, I would say. There really isn't any ambiguity when it comes to John Cena. You love him, you hate him, and I don't think there's many people that feel in the middle about John Cena.
Yeah, I mean, if people didn't know, there was a big history that was known back in the ruthless aggression era that Vince was focusing on three guys solely: Batista, Orton, and Brock Lesnar. And I talked about this on my show a couple weeks ago about what would happen if Brock never left in 2004. I want to run this question to you. Would the whole direction of the company moving to a family entertainment show would change if Brock Lesnar was still there?
Yeah, I don't know. Like Brock was the next big thing. I mean, he was the guy. He beat The Rock at SummerSlam. I mean, this was a guy the WWE was very high on,
Mm-hmm.
and many people were angry when Brock left because they felt that a lot of people had done a lot of things to put this guy over, to put him in the position to be that next guy, and then he just walked away. And that leads to another conversation coming out of this feud. What ends up happening? A lot of people believe Brock Lesnar is going to defeat John Cena. Brock Lesnar is going to hold the title till WrestleMania, which would be very interesting
Yeah.
because Brock isn't going to be around. People can say all they like, oh, well, Brock can make a deal with the WWE. They're not in the deal making mode when it comes to money right now with Brock Lesnar because Brock Lesnar, I will give John Cena this. He called Brock Lesnar a mercenary. That's not a lie. He is a mercenary. He comes when he's paid. He has no problem sitting at home when he's not. And that is who Brock Lesnar is. To suggest the WWE is going to book him to more dates and more appearances, I don't see that happening. So it would be a very different look for the WWE title. But what I'm getting at is ultimately, if that's the road they go, they say that Roman Reigns will be the guy that faces him at WrestleMania 31, and that will be the launching pad for Reigns to become the guy. And that's interesting too because a lot of people, I don't know if people are as sold on Roman Reigns as you might think. I still like him. I don't have a problem with him. I do think Dean Ambrose, when you look at the three guys from the Shield, is the total package. But I totally
Yeah.
understand why the WWE likes Roman Reigns as opposed to Dean Ambrose in that position that John Cena holds.
I think WWE looks at Roman Reigns as a guy that fits for every fan, both for hardcore fans because his edge and his history with the Shield, and then also because the it factor and um, the aura of Roman Reigns that go to the casual fans or the kids or especially the ladies when it comes to Roman Reigns. And the whole thing with Brock Lesnar and John Cena is always an interesting dynamic. Whether their matches are good or not is a different story. Um, I know the obvious choice right now is Brock to win the title. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I just I'm concerned if you're gonna have Brock win the title, James, and then have him lose it back to Night of Champions because it's the second round of the network subscription. I know they did the whole thing with Brock and Undertaker because it's a memorable moment for the network to look back at WrestleMania 30 and see that dynamic moment. But especially with a guy like Brock Lesnar, you either give him the title and give it a run for it, or don't do it at all.
But the thing is, they think that he's still going to get this run despite the fact that he's not going to be around that much. And that would be something totally foreign to people of your age and younger. I mean, when I was older, or when I was your age or younger, Hulk Hogan wasn't around that much, and we never saw him much on TV. But it was a different era. Hulk
Yeah,
Hogan was on every house show. Hulk Hogan was on Saturday Night's Main Event. Brock Lesnar is not doing house shows. He is not currently with the WWE in Australia. That is not what Brock Lesnar is doing. So Brock would basically be MIA, and you have Paul Heyman in effect representing the WWE Championship more weeks than Brock Lesnar, which would be interesting.
yeah.
I'd love to see it, no strange sort of way, but I'm not sure how fans would accept it, and I'm not sure if you could keep that whole dynamic going all the way to WrestleMania because if Brock follows his traditional schedule, we're going to see him at Night of Champions, and then we're not going to see him again until the Royal Rumble. So that's a long gap to not see your WWE champion on television. I don't know how they pulled that off.
I was originally in the favor of not having this match be for the title. I know a lot of people wouldn't like this decision, but I'd rather had Orton win the title at Money in the Bank and have Reigns hold it for a little while. Yeah, it's Reigns' first title. Doesn't mean he's the next guy, but they've done that a million times with guys who they got short little tirades here and there, and then just like how Bryan was building his momentum over last year with the title flip flopping back and forth. I think the WWE could do the same thing with Reigns and have Brock take the title from him at the Rumble and then Reigns get it back at Mania.
Randy Orton, though, he needs to learn to be a star on Twitter, and he hasn't got that down. When he gets that down, maybe someday. Actually, no. As much as people are fed up with John Cena, I think they're equally fed up with Randy Orton. Although I will say, Randy Orton is still a great wrestler. If you just look at him for pure wrestling, he is that. We're going to turn the page now, though, and leave the WWE. More on the WWE with myself and Chris Walder tomorrow on the podcast. And we also have two guests, which we'll get to at the very end. One of those being from the company known as Ring of Honor. A little bit of news for Ring of Honor. They are heading back to iPay-per-view, which we'll get into more with with both of our guests actually tomorrow on the podcast. But up here in Toronto, we are going to see Ring of Honor return to iPay-per-view, and it's the All-Star Extravaganza. Which, note to ROH, get someone who can spell extravaganza to put it on your poster, because on the original poster, they did not. But that said, first time ROH will be back on any form of pay-per-view since their big debut on traditional pay-per-view with Best in the World, and should be interesting. Coming to the hometown of Michael Elgin, the current ROH champion, uh, and Toronto always been a good market for ROH, So I think there's no question they'll have a big crowd. They're going to be at the old Maple Leaf Gardens, which I've been there to cover basketball. It's a larger venue than the Ted Reeve Arena that they normally run up there. But interesting times for ROH, and it looks like they're going to be able to stick with UStream because UStream originally was getting doing away with iPay per view, but ROH has worked out some kind of arrangement where it looks like they're going to be able to stay on UStream, and that's a good thing for them because that was going to be a death blow for independent wrestling, not just ROH, New Japan, a lot of other indie promotions that rely on UStream, and it's well documented the problems ROH had with their iPay per views before they found Ustream. It was not good, and if not for Kevin Steen, that company might have been in a very, very bad place, which they are not right now. In fact, I almost think when you look at how the year started for ROH compared to where they are now, they've had the best progression as a company when you consider WWE's problems with their network and TNA's problems, which we'll get into a little later, not having a television home potentially in a few months. ROH, things are going well. Their live attendance is up. From all accounts, their first venture on a pay-per-view went very well. So we'll see how they do in a world without Kevin Steen for ROH, which will also be interesting for them.
I think ROH is getting a bad deal out of this whole thing because they're with Sinclair Broadcasting and he's still stuck with doing internet pay-per-views. Like I seen the last one with UStream and it was fine for me, but when does it come to a point where ROH moves on from the iPay-per-views and does the sporadic month 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 to month pay-per-views in the year or the next couple years?
Well, I think they're going to go more a safe route and kind of. I think they'd be happy with almost following the model that WWE's trying to create with NXT. Have your four big events every year and get them on traditional pay-per-view. I think if ROH could pull that off in 2015, they'd be very happy. Obviously, you're going to have Final Battle on there. That's their next foray into traditional pay-per-view. At least that's been all the rumor and the buzz. And we're going to talk with Matt Taven on the podcast tomorrow, and he kind of confirms that they're looking at Final Battle as the next foray into traditional pay-per-view. But if they could have the big four like the WWE used to have, and have an pay-per-view sprinkled in here and there, I think that's a good model for ROH at this point. They do have the problem with their television that isn't going away, and Spike TV, which we'll get into the situation with TNA coming out of this. Spike TV doesn't seem to have an appetite for wrestling. I know a lot of people have been talking about, well, maybe Jeff Jarrett with his Global Force Wrestling is going to be on Spike TV, or maybe ROH could come up with some kind of deal to be on Spike. But from what I'm hearing, Spike, it's not just TNA. It's not about Vince Russo as much as people want to make it about that. They just aren't that interested in a wrestling product at this point. I mean, and if that's the case, what can they really do? Like, it is what it is. They own Bellator, and Bellator's had a turnaround and a change in the people running things there. And I'm not a huge follower of Bellator, but from what I understand from Steve Muehlhausen, who covers it for us on Between the Ropes, Bellator, they're kind of turned in a corner and then they're looking all right. Maybe Spike TV just doesn't want to be in wrestling anymore, and if that's the case, well, no one's going to be on there come October.
I'm gonna go with the Triple H point of view when it comes to TNA and the whole Spike TV thing. So I've heard around many different outlets and news places where they're talking about how Spike TV wanted 10% of TNA as far as their TV deal and what goes down with the company. I heard they wanted to do to more cross promotion between them and Bellator. That's one of my issues, and I kind of see where TNA's coming from, where they, even though they did bring in the guys like Tito Ortiz or King Mo and Rampage Jackson, I think they're trying to distance themselves from MMA because I could see where people could be turned off from watching a show when you have mixed martial arts guys on a pro wrestling show. It's two different entities, and it just doesn't work in this model, especially for pro wrestling these days.
Yeah, I mean, Bellator has not been as reciprocal either in the cross promotion. I think you could have a cross promotion if everyone's on board with it. I mean, but that's very difficult to pull off. I mean, I think the WWE would clearly benefit if they could get Ronda Rousey to show up at SummerSlam. But is Dana White going to be on board with such a thing? I don't know about that. I'm just not. Oh, there we go. We had our audio cut out there, but what I was saying was, cross promotion can work, but I'm just not convinced that everyone wants it to work or is willing to make that happen. I don't think Dana White wants to see Ronda Rousey and her four horsewomen popping up on WWE TV anytime soon. And even if WWE had gone over to Fox Sports One, I still think that would have been a hard sell.
Yeah, it's an odd situation, like I said earlier, but it's weird because you look at how TNA's been so poorly with their marketing and their promotions department and just the whole business of TNA. Not talking about like the in-ring product, even though it's kind of suspect if you call it the creative team and the people that book their TNA, but it's always like one thing or another. It's either they have good taping here or there, and then it has another bad business decision that laps over everything they've been trying to do this whole year as far as the product is concerned, and trying to move on from what happened with occurring with the guys like Hulk Hogan and Bischoff and them trying to make it like a remake of WCW.
Yeah, well, nothing's moved the dial with them, right? It's like
Yeah,
they've had everybody and their brother come over, and other than for a brief little window when Kurt Angle first came over, I think that caught people's attention for a second, and that to me encapsulated what's wrong with TNA. Instead of having Joe go over on Kurt Angle, no, we can't upset Kurt. Kurt's the big WWE star. So they put Kurt Angle over Samoa Joe. And that's what they consistently did. They took the few homegrown talents that they had, and really Samoa Joe, as much as you can say he's a homegrown TNA talent, he's really a homegrown ROH talent who went to TNA. But that said, the guys that were associated with their company, they always treated badly. And AJ Styles at the top of that list,
yeah,
who they let go, and he's doing just fine, by the way. If you believe him, making a similar amount of money working for New Japan and Ring of Honor. And that Ring of Honor show that I mentioned coming to Toronto, AJ is booked on that show as well. He's going to be there in Toronto for the show, the All Star Extravaganza. So that's a big deal for ROH to have him booked on that show. But that's a side note from what we're talking about. Josh, you follow TNA much closer than I do, obviously, and I mean, I just don't have any love for this product. I've forsaken it a long time ago. But what are your thoughts? Can this company survive, or is this company literally on life support like everyone thinks?
I think it's a little bit of both. Um, I think one of my main issues is the constant trying to persuade people that this is the ECW of the modern day era for this company, and it's like I said earlier with the WCW thing. TNA is their business model and the product wise, it's sucked in the past. That doesn't work. Okay, maybe you have your guys who are obsessed with the Monday Night Wars era and this and that. And you see it all the time on Twitter and Facebook. Oh, they should bring back the Attitude Era or this, that. But there's nothing original about TNA with anything they do. Well, the same thing could be said for WWE, especially with wrestling being on television for over 60 years. What really is their creative thing to do? And it's kind of hard these days, even for Ring of Honor. What is the new alternative way to present a professional wrestling show on a week by week basis?
Well, I think Ring of Honor gets it better than TNA though, in the sense of I think Ring of Honor appeals to a much old school type of feel to it, where I think everyone in that company in Ring of Honor has a purpose and they're all focused on the championships within that company, which is something that clearly is lacking in the WWE. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
only title that matters in the WWE, and only sometimes, depending on who's holding it, is the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. The Intercontinental title, the US title, the tag team titles, the Divas title, they all mean nothing, but the three championships that they have in ROH, the tag team titles, the ROH World Television title, and the ROH World Championship itself, are really highly revered and highly regarded and treated with such reverence. I mean, it was made to be such a big deal that Michael Elgin won the ROH World Heavyweight title in that match with Adam Cole. And I think that's the one thing that ROH does have going for it, as well as I think the superior in-ring product of the three. I mean, I know JR wants ROH to slow down and all of that, but that said, they have a very entertaining product. Adam Cole is a tremendous talent. Michael Bennett's a tremendous talent. Matt Taven, who's going to be our guest on the podcast tomorrow, is a tremendous talent. They just had Kevin Steen leave, who, in my mind, is the best guy in the Indies. You have guys like AJ Styles working there now, Kazarian and Daniels, who used to be a tag team TNA had and just didn't use. I mean, that seems almost criminal to me. And even guys like the Young Bucks and their relationship with New Japan, I think ROH, whether you like it or whether you don't, they are trying to provide an alternative. And I think TNA gets accused of being, you always hear the term WWE light. And in a lot of ways, they kind of are that.
Yeah, you made a lot of good points, especially with the ROH thing. I kind of think where wrestling struggles at, it's kind of like a football and like professional sports kind of thing where okay, you won the West conference, right? You have like your certain conferences and different leagues that the media and sports fans put on the pedestal, and then you got like the Eastern Conference or even the NFC. It's like, oh, okay, you did that. So, like for example, let's say like the Giants won the NFC East. It's like saying the Usos won the tag team titles. Okay, it's nice, but you're still gonna have your questions about it. And I think that's the struggle when you have like multiple titles in a professional wrestling company because not everybody could be the main focal point of the show, and that's the issue that you struggle with these companies. And it's the thing where there's no stability in any of these divisions they have for any of the companies besides the world title scene. And even that, it's always fluctuated with storylines and drama and this and that.
Yeah, it's teenage storylines have just been bizarre, and I mean the one that really bugs people is the one how AJ Styles left the company, basically imitating the CM Punk angle, and
Yeah.
then unlike the WWE who had CM Punk re-signed, AJ goes and leaves. I mean, they put him over. When Hulk Hogan left that company, Dixie Carter was on her hands and knees begging him to stay. These are not good looks for your company.
Oh man. And it's funny because you remember how the many times where you had like guys like Kevin Nash or Rob Van Dam be like, oh, these people come up to us in the airport and they're like, oh, we miss you on WWF and ECW. What have you been doing lately? Oh, I've been on TNA over the last couple of years. Still
Yeah,
to this day, this company's
but
been here for 12 years, but nobody knows them still.
but the other thing too, that is a fact as well. But I got news for you. There were a lot of guys that were collecting a paycheck from TNA, and you mentioned a couple of them. The Rob Van Dam we saw in TNA was nothing like the Rob Van Dam we first saw come back to WWE. Admittedly, Rob has, I think, faded back into that Rob Van Dam we saw in TNA.
Yeah,
But originally, when he came back to the WWE, he had a spark to him. And it's been the same with anyone who's been in TNA. If they do find their way back to WWE, take Christian as an example. I think he did a great job when he was in TNA. But when he's back in the show with the WWE, he brings it a little more. There's a little more fire and pep in his step. And I think that's the same with everybody.
yeah. I'm glad you brought up Christian because I think Christian is one of the more underrated performers in the history of wrestling. I mean, even if you look at his 2011 run with Randy Orton throughout that whole year and the One More Match thing, I mean, that was some of the best work of his entire career. And I think something that's always been missed out was right before he left WWE in 2005, he was having a feud with John Cena. And he was like the anti-American, and he's like, go Canada, and that there's to be a Canadian WWE champion. And I think that's something that's been missing. I think that's something that could have helped his career and also helped out Cena's career in the process.
Yeah, and they're right now the WWE has been missing a lot of Canadians. That's why I think I'm excited that Kevin Steen's on the way and Sami Zayn is already there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we haven't had a real legitimate Canadian star since Edge got injured. I mean, you had that brief run with Christian that you mentioned, but he never really got over in the way that Edge did. And it's such a difference for WWE up here in Toronto. I mentioned ROH will be running at the old Maple Leaf Gardens, but when WWE comes to town, they don't run at the ACC, which is the big arena in town. They run at Rico Coliseum, which is the home of the AHL team that holds about 6,000 people. That would be ludicrous to think of for the WWE to run in such a small venue in one of their major markets in Canada. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's Toronto has become a big venue for the UFC or what it is, but Toronto doesn't seem to get the love it once did from the WWE. And as that being basically the market where I'm most likely to see a pay-per-view or anything of significance, that's kind of sad for me. I mean, the last time we had a pay-per-view in Toronto, I'm pretty sure was Trish Stratus's last match in 2006, Unforgiven. I don't think they've been back since.
Yeah, you had that one, and then I think it was either Breaking Point or something that was in Canada. I think it was Montreal actually. But yeah, you said Unforgiven. The last one was the SummerSlam '04, where you had Orton against Chris Benoit for the world title.
No, but Trish's retirement was 2006, so that's after that. So we're talking like 8 years since Toronto's had a major
That's
WWE event.
crazy.
It is. It's nuts.
Uh,
I mean, maybe that's why I'm a fan of ROH. People, maybe that's it. You
you need
don't
more
bring
demand.
your
You need
big
more.
show to my town. What else am I supposed to do? I mean, I'm just saying WWE. But
You
anyway,
just need more variety.
to review off the top of the show, in case you missed it, Alberto Del Rio is no more in the WWE. Apparently had an altercation with a worker behind the scenes and has been released. And I don't think he's going to be like Emma and get rehired while we're having this podcast, Josh. I don't think that's happening.
Nope,
No, it's
not at
not going
all.
to happen. He's not going to be saved. Anyway, we got about 15 minutes left in the program. We're going to wind things down, but if you have any questions, the Q&A is up for you. If you can see it, by all means, take advantage of it and use it. If not, click on the little thing on the bottom of the screen for the Google Hangout somewhere in your bottom left-hand corner, and you should be able to get to the Google Hangout and ask questions. If not, we'll just bring this thing to a close because Josh is off to cover TNA and watch Dixie Carter be put through a table, and I am off to watch NXT, where I have been told, much to my dismay, that Eva Marie is wrestling a match on NXT. I am very upset about this.
Hey, you have to show that people care about though. I'll give you that.
Who cares about
For
her?
NXT,
The people that care about her, to me, are the same people that care about Kim Kardashian, and I don't
it's
like
true.
those people.
Good point.
That's basically it. I do want to talk to you though. Speaking of TNA, how they promoted tonight's show. A lot of controversy amongst wrestling folks. Some people weren't bothered by it. Other people were like, "You idiots, TNA! You gave away a moment in your promo." Where do you fall on that?
I know a lot of people say that wrestling's like a male soap opera, but no wrestling company, I don't care who it is. I'm fine if it's a video package of a certain wrestler coming back or whatever. But when you have moments like this that can be like a turning moment for your product on TV wise for the company, especially like this with Dixie Carter, who's been the thorn of every wrestling fan over the last 3 years, why would he do that a week before the show's over? And you have to hear the annoying Mike Tenay and Taz soundbite that actually goes on through the table. There's no
Maybe this
point of
was
watching the
Vince Russo's
show.
last idea before he was fired. Maybe. I don't know. Could
Yeah,
be.
everything. There
Vince
needs to be a
Russo's
square for
lasting
everything.
gift to TNA, their best angle, and he ruined it. We're spreading rumors now. We don't know if that's true. But anyway, what are you looking forward to coming up this week in wrestling? Obviously, we're heading to the go home show for SummerSlam. Finally, John Cena and Brock Lesnar will be in the same place. I think that is obviously the big story for Raw. I'm pretty sure Stephanie and Brie are not closing the show again. I'll
No.
go out on a limb and say that, but Brock and Cena in the same ring, in the same building, I think will, if SummerSlam is to do anything, they need to see a nice rating for the go home show for SummerSlam to see if people are indeed legitimately interested and want to spend $9.99, which we heard a lot about on Raw, to get the
9.99.
WWE Network and watch John Cena and Brock Lesnar go at it, or spend your money on pay-per-view if you want. Uh, Supposedly, a bunch of countries are getting the WWE Network before SummerSlam. We saw their rollout in the United States. It didn't go so well. So we'll cross our fingers, hope it goes better in the rest of the world, but I'm not holding my breath.
um, what I'm looking forward to wrestling, for Raw, I think WWE needs to focus on three things. I think they've already established a good job of what's going to be on the show. But I think there needs to be more of an emphasis of what's going on with Jericho and Wyatt. I think it's been kind of like rushed with their feud over the last couple of weeks, and I think more of Orton and Reigns, and then lastly Rollins and Ambrose. Yeah, I think we're going to get a little confrontation between Cena and Brock, which should be pretty good. And of course, you got the Hulk Hogan birthday celebration.
Wow. Will Nasty Boy Knobs and Sags get a payday? That's the real question, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
But yeah, I don't want to do a spoiler for SmackDown, but needless to say, we will find out what Dean Ambrose makes the stipulation for this match with Seth Rollins.
Mhm.
I am not a happy camper. I do not like what Dean chose. I'll just say that. Chris Wilder is known for spoiling things, so tune in to the podcast tomorrow. He'll probably screw it up and spoil it for the people,
Yeah,
but
just spoil us
maybe
on
not.
the
Maybe
audio.
I'll stop him. We'll see. Uh, but yeah, and you mentioned the Bray Wyatt and Chris Jericho feud. I've been tremendously disappointed by this, and I worry for Bray Wyatt. He's great on the microphone.
Hmm.
I'm not sure where he's at in the ring though, because Chris Jericho is a guy who, I mean, he's carried everyone to like great matches over the history of his career. famously, he carried Bill Goldberg to his best match in the WWE. Many
Yeah.
say when he fought Chris Jericho. Bray Wyatt isn't doing that with Jericho, and I'm not sure why these two aren't clicking. And I wonder, you know, where this is heading for Bray Wyatt because I think he's a tremendous talker and he can get me to want to see his match. But once we get there, it's been really hit or miss for Bray Wyatt.
What I've been flabbergasted by is okay, Chris beat Wyatt at Battleground, right? And why are you having Bray just constantly taking them out every single show, taking them out? I think it would have been a better story is to have Jericho get more of the advantage on Wyatt, so fans are like, oh, White is not the mastermind everybody makes him out to be. Maybe he's losing his touch. Maybe he's losing his steam. And then before you know, when everybody loses hope in Bray Wyatt, boom, takes him out at SummerSlam.
And clearly, he's got the best entrance in the business right now. With
Yes.
those cell phone lights and everything, it's amazing. And really good. Few technical difficulties, but we seem to have survived this transition of co-hosts, and Josh has done his part admirably. So I thank Josh. Before I preview our podcast with myself and Chris Walder, you have your own stuff that you are into, Josh Lopez, including, of course, your radio show. So tell the people where they can find you and what you're up to in a given week, and basically promote yourself, as they say in the wrestling business.
All right, we won't need to do excessive plugging like we got on Monday night, but I'll keep it short and sweet. So I host a 3-hour wrestling show called the Pro Wrestling Experience. It's on every Wednesdays, 10 to 1 here in Central Time. I think it'd be 11 to 2 out the good folks out there in Canada. And we're having our 75th episode next week. And we're doing a big preview for SummerSlam. And I'll even welcome you, James, to come on if you want. And it could be a 4-hour special. And besides that, you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Lopez CSR. And I do play-by-play articles for Raw, SmackDown, Main Event, and Impact Wrestling on BetweenTheRopes.com. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I do NXT on Between the Ropes because Josh cannot do two shows at the same time, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been a guest on Josh's radio program in Chicago a few times, and you know what, buddy? You tell me what time you want me to be on, and we'll make that happen. I'll be on the show next week, and we can talk some things on your show. And you'll be back on this show next Thursday. As for our podcast coming up tomorrow, it is a rather big one for us. We welcome back Matt Taven, who is 100% healthy, as he was not a week ago. We get all the scoop on a healthy 100% Matt Taven, and actually some really cool stuff, some behind the scenes, if you will. Matt Taven is now the answer to a trivia question, as he was the last man to take a package power driver from one Kevin Steen as he worked the last independent show that Steen was on, and just some real raw behind the scenes stuff from Matt Taven on his thoughts about Kevin Steen and where Kevin is, of course, going, which probably is not to help El Generico help the orphans. We'll just say that. He's probably going to someplace in Florida with three initials.
Might
And
hang out with
also,
Brian.
also, we didn't talk about this at all. The Young Bucks are teasing going to NXT, Josh. How fun would it be for the Young Bucks to be in NXT?
I think all these guys are just heading down there to hang out with Brian Fritz. I think Brian got a new vacation house over there. That's just to hang out in Florida. But no, okay. But yeah, I'm excited to see the Young Bucks go down there, and if Kevin Steen goes down there, boy, you're gonna have a really interesting dynamic of a 1-hour NXT show, which might need to be extended with the guys that are gonna be on that roster.
Yeah, I want a WWE or NXT Super Kick party, please. But what I do want first, I want to get the Young Bucks on my podcast before that happens. So
Gotta
if
get that done.
anyone up there is listening, this is what I would like to happen in my world. Moving on with our podcast tomorrow, the Young Bucks are not on. I would love for that to be the case. They are not. But we do have Matt Taven from Ring of Honor. That's pretty good for us. We also have Chris Harrington, who is a very smart guy. He is a pretty brilliant guy when it comes to WWE business and all of that. He talks about WrestleNomics and does lots of number crunching with wrestling and stuff. Really intelligent guy. I thought he would be a good guest to have on with all the WWE business news from the last couple weeks. And we kick it around about the WWE, about TNA, about even ROH and the independents, and has some interesting opinions. I am going to do a little spoiler for our podcast and see if you know the answer to something that Chris Harrington actually stumped me with, Josh.
Go ahead.
What wrestler has wrestled the most matches in the WWE in the calendar year of 2014? Do you have a guess for me?
Roman Reigns.
Sorry, I did not hear. I'm having trouble with the audio again.
Roman Reigns. Roman
No,
Reigns.
I still didn't hear. I don't know. Anyway,
Roman Reigns. That was,
oh, well, don't worry. I think it went out and I just didn't hear it. But the answer, if you got it right, you can go thumbs up or thumbs down. It was Cesaro, believe it or not.
ooh.
You did not get that right, did you? No, not good. Yeah, but here's even better. You want to know what second and third are? Ryback and Curtis Axel.
Oh boy, right back. You get a lot of them for sure.
Yeah, that's just awful. I was like,
Yeah.
I guess like Seth Rollins or Dean Ambrose. They were like 9th or 10th. They did not even come in the top 5. So
I wonder
what
what's
did I
worse.
know?
I wonder what's worse, waiting for a Cameron match or the right back to match on Raw each week.
Oh well, I don't know. We're gonna wrap this puppy up because my audio is failing at the very end here. Join myself, Chris Walder, for the podcast tomorrow. It will be out as always before the end of SmackDown. Matt Taven, Chris Harrington, and Walder will be back in only audio form, which is really a blessing in some ways. In other ways, not. I don't know. He says he might pop in on this show once in a while. We'll see if he actually lives up to that. But anyway, that is about it for us. We have SmackDown and NXT to get to. So thank you for joining us, and we will be back next week and keep this ship afloat if we can. Maybe I need to get new headphones for next week. That might be something on my to-do list. With that said, thanks to Josh. We welcome him on to the program, and we think he's going to do a great job for us. And while me, I'm just struggling along. You have to put up with me whether I do a good job or not. It's pretty much that's the way it is. But I'm doing the best I can. We'll be back next week with more wrestling, and who knows, maybe someone else will be fired before the show. That was pretty interesting stuff. So with that said, it is myself, Josh Lopez, wishing you fond farewell. And we'll look at Josh. He's very excited. I brought his camera up because he's got his Sting. That's an action figure, people, not a doll. An action figure. Yeah, Sting. Will he be back? You heard my epic fight with Walder and how much I care about Sting coming back. And Josh claiming that he is the champion. Brock Lesnar would finish you in 90 seconds. Probably sooner. Anyway, with that said, we're out of here. We're done. We got stuff to do. He's got to watch Dixie go through a table, and I got to watch Eva Marie wrestle. I don't know which is worse. You can decide for yourselves. Goodbye, people.